Come on in.
Let's go.
A new film based on the rock opera by The Who, is a 2-hour tribute to an almost forgotten species, the mods of the early 60s. The film won't be released until the autumn, but already a mini-mod revival is underway. Like the other revival of last year, the Skinheads, these mods haven't got too much in common with their predecessors, but they think that mod is the way to look and mod bands are the right music to follow. It's not just fans of The Who, but hundreds of kids in and around London swapping their punk gear for Parkers, Fred Perry shirts and ancient scooters. But where the mod revival is really taking place is down in the clubs. Is the Chords, one of a dozen or so who are recreating the mod sound and the clean-cut way of dressing. Bands with names like the Purple Hearts, the Scooters and the Mods. But why choose the mod era to emulate? Isn't another revival just a sign that kids are hard up for ideas of their own right now? Today we're going to look at mods both old and new and find out what there was about the original craze that makes it so attractive to young people 15 years later. Violent, pill-popping scooter riders in button-down shirts and Parkers. That's most people's memory of mods. But the original mods, the ones who started the ball rolling as early as 1962, were a very different breed. Reasonably well off because they held down steady jobs, they worshipped clothes. What they wore made them feel superior to everyone else. Even after the mod movement spread away from its original roots, fashion remained the average mod's #1 obsession. Roy Carr, who's now a rock journalist, and Chris Reeves, a musician, both played in mod groups back in '65. They recalled how vital it was to keep up with a constantly changing fashion scene.
I mean, you could be really in with, say, a jacket or a tie on Friday night. Monday night, you had to get rid of it, you know.
Well, that must have cost a lot of money.
Oh, yeah, but your money went a lot further. 3 records for a quid.
People weren't so out of work in those days,
yeah. If you had 15 quid a week, you could go and buy, say, 3 records for a quid, shirt for 2 quid, go down the scene for 30 bob for a whole night out and still have money for the rest of the week.
And, of course, most mods then were in relatively well-paid jobs. I mean, there were...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was the idea, to try and get yourself into some office or something, you know. God knows why, but, you know, I suppose it was to get the loot. You know.
I didn't know anybody that was on the dole. I think we must have been fortunate. It was almost subversive because you could go to work dressed in the sort of clothes that you could go and hang out in clubs and nobody would know. So that was the thing. You could hold a job down in, say, the Yorkshire Penny Bank or whatever it was and still be cool. You didn't have to, you weren't like weekend hippies.
When you were both on the road, did people look at what you were dressed at, how you were dressed? Tell me a bit about all that.
Yeah.
You guys
Kids in the audience check.
Saved it.
Oh, you used to sort of... We worked mainly in the north of England because there was more money up there. I mean, you worked the marquee, you got 15 quid. I won't say how much we used to get up there, but you used to get good money.
Guess it.
So you used to go down Petticoat Lane, round here, a couple of Madras jackets, £4.75. That would do you for about 3 weeks until you just wasted them away.
Swap them round in the van and all that.
You know, and that was it. Find out what the latest Italian shoes were in. And then next week everybody in the audience would be wearing it, so you had to change. So half your money used to go on clothes, but it was fun.
Chris, tell me about how important leather coats were.
Well, I remember this guy down Brighton Promenade, somewhere like that, and he had a really amazing leather coat on. And there was about 30 of us all strolling along, and the guy who was at the front, the main man, kind of went up to him and said, "Here, give us that coat." And he said, you know, F off and all the rest of it. And like the geezer just pulled out this pistol and just started blasting away with it. He'd rather do that than part with this thing, you know, like a complete nutter. You know, I mean, people were like, it was like to own the heavens if you had an amazing leather or suede coat, you know.
I'm gonna wait till the midnight hour.
It wasn't long before music became second only in importance to clothes as far as most mods were concerned. But the music they listened to in the early days wasn't the hard-edged rock of bands like The Who and the Small Faces. They bought imported records like early Jamaican reggae or blue beat and American soul, especially for their dances like the block and the slide. The demands for transatlantic soul were such that British bands were forced to serve up a steady diet of cover versions, as Roy Carr, ex-member of the Executives, and Chris Reeves, one-time Diac, recalled.
Like with me, the band I had, we had problems because we'd go out and say play Motown, Tamla, whatever, but the A&R men would say you've got to write your own material. You couldn't write. You couldn't. You were just hamstrung, so you used to forget the records and just go out and rely on live work. And there were so many bands working, making good money, drawing crowds, and they couldn't sell more than 1,000 records.
And we used to do stuff like Respect and things like that in the band that I was in. It was like, they always used to go down better than your own songs. Yeah. People weren't interested in that in those days.
They used to ask you not to play.
Yeah, right. Just get on with it, you know.
But two young mod bands of the time did break away from covering other people's material, The Who and the Small Faces. They created a new style of aggressive R&B, which influenced much later rock. Can you remember what you thought about The Who and the Small Faces?
Oh, back in
64, 69?
Just like bouncing up and down, all the aggression and everything.
I never talked to anybody for a week after I saw them. I mean, they just completely wiped me out.
Yeah, me too.
And then what happened, I saw them one week, and then the next week we had to play with them, and I mean, I just didn't want to go on and play with them. I mean, how could you play before The Who? And then the week after that, we played with the Small Faces and Georgie Fame, and I was really depressed.
I saw the Small Faces in the Gun, actually, in Croydon, this little tavern, and I saw them sort of lining up all these tables in front of the stage, and I thought, what the hell's all that about? They were putting the mic stands on there, and I suddenly realised they were putting these enormous, great big boxes up behind it, which turned out to be these Marshall amplifiers. I'd never seen in my life before, you know. And they nearly tore the roof off the place, you know. Before then, everyone was using little sort of biscuit tins with a speaker in, you know.
The huge noise and energy of their performance brought The Who a fanatical mod following. Back in 1965, Pete Townsend talked about his musical philosophy.
My personal motivation on the stage is quite simple. It consists of a hate of every kind of pop music and a hate of everything our group has done, really. You get higher and higher, and you're at the peak of a crescendo, for example, or the peak of a recording career, and you find yourself chopping away at your own legs, sort of auto-destructive music. I prefer to be in this position, it's more exciting. You have to resign yourself to the fact that a large part of the audience is sort of thick, you know, and don't appreciate quality, however much you try and put it over. The fact is that our group hasn't got any quality, it's just musical sensationalism. You do something big on the stage and 1,000 geezers sort of go, ah. It's just basic shepherd's bush enjoyment.
At the same time as the on-stage violence which became The Who's trademark, mods themselves began fighting. As the movement spread, the clean-cut, short-haired lads on their scooters met the opposition of 50s-style bikers known as rockers, and pitched battles between mods and rockers at places like Brighton and Clacton on bank holidays soon became common. Newsreels of the time were suitably outraged.
There was just one thing casting a slight cloud over Clacton, the possibility that the mods and rockers might once again descend on the town. Any who did sensed that the police would be more than ready for them. Clacton had no intention of being a battleground again. It really has come to something when people can't take a short holiday without the threat of long-haired youngsters with knives indulging in an orgy of hooliganism. Reinforcements to the ranks of law and order seemed more than enough to cope with anything that might happen. On the whole, they were, though they could not completely prevent it.
What caused all this trouble yesterday?
Boredom.
On whose part?
Well, on both.
What happened?
Well, there was lots of things, you know. They started, you know what rockers are like, don't you?
Well, I don't know. You tell me.
Well, they, you know, their motorbikes, they started bashing into the scooters and knocking our motors. We are the mods! 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 We are the mods!
That's the geezer that rode me off the road yesterday. Let's fucking have a...
A blow-by-blow recreation of the biggest mods and rockers riot at Brighton in 1964 features in Quadrophenia. Frank Rodham directed the film. How did he manage to recreate the atmosphere of the mod period on film?
When I was working with the cast to get them to know the mod thing, I took them around to meet some old mods. And we sat around together and talked about you know, the music, about the period, about amphetamine, and the effects of speed. And
where did you find the old mods?
they're everywhere. Old mods never died. The thing about the mod era was it was a very efficient period. The clothes, the hair, the whole style was very efficient. I mean, even when some of the guys used to take amphetamine, it's a very efficient drug. So what you get this very sort of efficient dancing, very clipped conversations, very speedy conversations, and they would dance in a very small area. Hundreds of mods bouncing up and down, and that kind of restrained kind of dancing was something that we had to practice with all the extras.
Now, one thing I would say about the film is that the girls in the film don't really look the full 100% way that mod girls did look in about 1963 or 64 when they had the white stockings, white lipstick, very, very black eye makeup, very much shorter hair than you've got in the film, and those horrible nylon raincoats and cloddy shoes. And the girls in the film look much more attractive.
The main girl, she's like... she's not mod-like, she's more like Jane Asher or Cathy McGowan. And I remember when I used to go to mod parties, even the mods, if they would admire mod style in themselves, they might admire a girl because she looked like a real cool mod, but they never want to try and make it with her, they never want to try and sleep with her, because the style was too extreme. So you get all these mods at a party, and all these mod girls sitting there in their incredible mod gear, and they're all heading towards some girl with long hair who's totally un-mod-like.
Frank, how conscious were you when you were making the film of the mod revival, or didn't you know anything about it?
On the onset, when we first started the film, we had no idea that there might be a mod revival. We hoped that we would create one, you know, stylistically, and we hoped that there'd be lots of little mods wandering around the streets, and that would obviously increase the interest in the film. And I think our interest right across the board, but from the most optimistic was that we'd start a mod cult again. It would be great for the film. And the other part would be perhaps they'd be fighting on the beaches again in Brighton. I don't think anybody really wanted that to happen, but you you know, it did occur to us.
So have the makers of Quadrophenia succeeded in creating an artificial mod boom to coincide with the film's release? Or does the revival have deeper roots than that? In part 2, we'll be talking to the new mods themselves and finding out. The original mod era came to an end in 1966, before some of today's new mods were even born. Why have they suddenly picked up on a cult that's been forgotten for 13 years? And how concerned are they about getting the original look exactly right?
I'm glad this is all blown up now, because it means that I can sort of come out the shadows a bit, you know?
Why, were you embarrassed when punk was all the thing?
No, I wasn't really, funnily enough. You know, I've dressed near enough the same. It's just that I couldn't be me, you know?
Well, can you remember anything, or do you know anything about what it was like to be a mod the first time round in the 60s?
A little bit. It was a lot more, you know, the violence pills thing, which, you know, we're just not into now. I mean, that's for meatheads.
But how can you check out whether you're wearing the right clothes or the clothes that they wore before?
Well, it's not a question of wearing the clothes that they wore before. It's a question of wearing the right sort of style and doing it in your own way.
Well, where did you get your suit from?
Oxfam.
Oxford, how much was it?
£3.
I've been done.
Tell me this thing about Parkers. I mean, Parkers were, people wore them the time before. Why have they all cropped up again?
Because it's cold on the back of a scooter. I went down to Margate on it. I tell you, without this, it would have just froze to death.
Do you think that the Parker thing is an easy way of one mod spotting another? I mean...
That's what it is, yeah.
Depends what type of Parker you got on now, innit? I mean, you can get them cheap ones with the red lining, you know, and the fur around the pockets, and you got a whacking great pocket up here by your breast and that, you know, and they look really horrible. Because, like, if you look at these, you see most of the ones around there all got them all on, you know, ex-army. They used to be, what's his name, illegal to buy, you know. And so I suppose that's why they bought them, you know, and they put their own fur in. And then another company brought out fur Parkers with red lining and everything, you know what I mean?
What about all the badges you're wearing the first time round? Mods absolutely never wore badges or anything like that.
Yeah, well, you ain't got to follow it to the button, have you? You know what I mean? I mean, you set new trends and mix it with the 60s as well. That's how it is.
The 79 mods have none of the individuality which distinguished the look the first time round. Today, being a mod is largely a matter of wearing the right uniform. Parkers, sports shirts, hush puppies or sneakers, plus a display of the right kind of badges. This conformity is partly because made-to-measure tailors are really expensive, but it's also a reflection of the fact that the new mods are mostly unemployed and just can't afford the old mod gear. And like the clothes, the new mod sound is a rougher, less sophisticated version of the prototype. These are the Purple Hearts, and it's hard to deny that if they'd been around 2 years ago, they would have been happy with the punk label. And it's clear from talking to the audiences at mod gigs that the majority of them were punks themselves up to the end of last year. So is the mod revival just the latest stage in the development of punk? Just like the early days of punk, the mod scene has produced amateur fanzines, sold mainly at gigs like this one at the Wellington pub near Waterloo. First of the batch was Maximum Speed, and as far as the people involved with the magazine are concerned, mod is something new and exciting and not just a rehash of punk.
Basically, I know myself and my friends as well were really not very happy with the way punk was going. It was getting too commercialised and it was too Chelsea set, and that's basically the thing that we weren't very happy about. So now with mods we feel much more at home with our mates. They're blokes we go to football with, and they're just people who we will go about with anyway, and we feel really happy at being mods than anything else.
Mods started more sort of like in North and East London. Punks was sort of becoming a real West London chic thing. And so it sort of started from below this rather than above. That's why, you know, people say it's just another extension of punk, ain't true.
Yeah, the thing that annoys us really more than anything else is the fact that punk got this tag as being working class, unemployment, dull Q rock, whereas most of the main punks, or the geezers who are in the top punk bands, were at art college and lived in really cushy homes in Surrey and Sussex and things like that.
Fathers who were commissioners.
Yeah, I mean, when people were punks, you'd have people who were normally bank clerks or something, who had quite short hair, but to go out on a punk night out would just put a load of Vaseline in their hair, and they'd pretend they're on the dole, but really they're bank clerks. I mean, anyone who says they're a mod now and says, oh, I work in a bank, no one cares. So what? I mean, it's the way you get your money. You're still who you are, you know.
Do you think that the word mod's a bit unfortunate if it's applied to what you're all involved in? I mean, because you use the word mod, it makes me want to say to you, why aren't you more like the original ones? I mean, why haven't you chosen a different name?
Yeah, I mean, everyone seems to think it's so manufactured that we've taken this culture and we've got to do this, dress like this, do that. It's not a case of that at all. I think it comes down to there's a sort of a youth culture which believes in sort of dressing smartly, listening to a certain type of music, which has gone back from the early mods, gone all the way through skinheads, punks to a certain extent, and now it's come back to people who are calling themselves mods again. They listen to black music, they wear smarter clothes, they're just the opposite of sort of the rockers or the grease.
The people involved with Maximum Speed have been moving towards the mod image for over a year, well before the Quadrophenia movie went into production. Like the other mods we talked to, they are awaiting the film's release with a mixture of anticipation and dread. You don't think that being a mod's just another thing after being a new,
Well, Quadrophenia's going to end all that, isn't it?
What do you think will happen when
it's going to commercialise it, and you're going to get all the shops like the punk shops, and all the little kiddies following on. They only know about the jam, you know, some of these, and yeah, it's going to end it all, you know. I mean, it's getting too big now, you know.
Are lots of shops selling mod clothes now?
Well, I don't know about that. There's one up there, Carnaby Cavern, who do the jam suits. Like £750,000 for a suit, you know what I mean?
So in a way, it's already going the way that punk went.
I can see it going that way, yeah.
So what do you feel about Quadrophenia? Are you sorry that they made
I'm dying to go and see it, like. I'm dying to go and see it, but it's going to end it all, and we all know that, you know. They're going to go and see it, come out, buy new Parkers, you know, try and get a scooter if they can, end up on push bikes, you know, end it all, you know.
Mods will be massive by the time Quadrophenia's not coming out to October anyway. It will just be a resurgence then, because mods will pick up. It's always been likely to pick up in the summer because everyone's going to be down at Brighton and places like that. So it's going to be big before Quadrophenia. Quadrophenia can't really be given any credit for making it big. If you're going to give any credit to the start of mods, really, it's got to be the jam.
Yeah.
Because it's from the jam, like, people started dressing in suits, and from that they sort of started thinking, right, we'll dress smart instead of punky. And from that's where mods have come again.
Everything about the jam, from the guitars they play to their hairstyles, is based on mid-60s British music and fashion. Many former punks see them as the only new wave band who haven't sold out, and that's why lots of them have joined the mod bandwagon. But although it's a genuine grassroots movement, does mod really have a future? In the last 12 months alone, we've seen in quick succession rockabilly, Merseybeat and skinhead revivals. What's to stop the mod movement being replaced equally swiftly by yet another revival? You'll be betrayed by your accent and manners. But don't you think that the whole mod thing will just be replaced by something else, maybe even flower power?
Yeah, probably.
I mean,
yeah, we've got this little theory about every 15 years,
yeah.
So, you know.
It's a complete recycling of what
in a
goes
couple of
on.
years' time, everyone will be going around with sort of beads and that, yeah. When they're trying to start
doesn't that, seriously, do you think the mod thing will be replaced by something else? It'll just be phased out?
Well, obviously, it's difficult to say at this stage because really you've got on it quite early. I mean, mod really hasn't been going for much longer than about 6 months in any sort of scale. Consequently, it's difficult to say what's going to happen, if anything is going to replace it. Mod's the only thing that I've ever really felt at home with, let's say. Consequently, there's no way that I'm immediately going to start growing my hair and wearing beads. So if mod phases out, then that would be it for me. I don't think people would immediately start becoming something else just because it's a fad, because mod really is something quite important.
The success or failure of the mod revival, like so many others, depends ultimately on the quality of the bands, and this is one of the biggest differences between the mods of '64 and their present versions. Back then, groups like the Chords and the Purple Hearts would have been left alone to develop their potential in small clubs. But in 1979, they're already being chased by a music press desperate to launch a new craze. All the signs are that the second mod era will be killed off by people anxious to make money out of it before it really gets started.
Reality!